I spent 6 years managing sales teams at a Chevrolet dealership, and I can tell you with absolute certainty, when a salesperson walks back into the manager's office and says, "We've got a problem with the customer on the lot," that is the best news you could possibly hear, because whatever you're doing, it's working. And I know what you might be thinking. Car salespeople are professionals. They're not going to get rattled by normal buyer behavior. You're not wrong. They're trained. They're good at what they do. But there are 7 specific things that bypass all of that training. And when you do them, you are no longer the customer they were taught to sell to. Most buyers think negotiating means haggling over price, back and forth on the sticker number. That's not where the real game is played. The real game is control, psychological control, informational control, timeline control. They want you thinking about monthly payments, not total price. They want you emotionally attached to the truck before you've talked numbers. They want you in the building long enough that leaving feels harder than staying. These 7 behaviors break that control. I saw them work hundreds of times from the other side of the desk. And I watched my salespeople, good people, most of them, get genuinely frustrated when a customer walked in knowing how to disrupt the process. I'll give you an example. I watched a 68-year-old man walk into my showroom with a folder under his arm. Didn't say much, didn't smile, just had that folder. My best salesperson came to me 20 minutes later and said, "I don't know what to do with this guy." That folder had his pre-approval letter in it. That was all it took, 1 piece of paper, and the entire sale changed. We couldn't mark up his interest rate. We couldn't play the monthly payment game. We had to compete with his bank's number or walk away from the deal. That man understood something most buyers miss. The dealership's power comes from information you don't have. When you show up with that information yourself, the game ends. These aren't tricks. These aren't hacks. These are behaviors that genuinely disrupt the sale from their side. Here's what they are. The first one. You walk into the dealership with a pre-approval letter from your own bank or credit union. You already know your interest rate. You already know your maximum loan amount. That's called outside financing, and it is the single thing that costs dealerships the most profit. Here's why. The finance office makes more money on the loan than the dealership makes on the car itself. That's dealer reserve. It's the commission the bank pays for marking up your interest rate. When you bring your own financing, that entire profit center disappears. I'd see it in the sales manager's face every time someone pulled out that pre-approval letter. The whole deal just got harder. I had a saleswoman named Jennifer who was excellent, top performer, confident, knew her numbers. One Saturday, a man named Frank came in looking at an F-150. Brought a pre-approval letter from Navy Federal. Jennifer came back to my office and said, "He's already financed. Do I even try?" I told her to run the numbers anyway. She went to the finance manager. Came back 10 minutes later. We couldn't beat Navy Federal's rate. Not even close. Frank bought the truck. Dealership made $800 on the whole deal instead of the usual $4,000. Jennifer was furious. I told her, that's what prepared looks like. Before you even start talking about the truck, you say this: "Just so you know, I already have financing through my bank at 5.2%. If you can beat that rate, I'm open to it. If you can't, I'm using mine." Say it exactly like that. Then stop talking. Here's why those words work. You've set the ceiling. You've told them their target. You're not saying you won't use their financing. You're just making them compete. And most of the time, they won't try because they know they're marking it up and you'll see it. Now, I have to be fair. Some dealerships can beat your credit union rate, especially if they're running a manufacturer promotion. That's real. If they can beat your rate, take their financing. Just make sure you're seeing the actual rate on paper before you agree to anything. The second one. You're on the lot. You've been there 10 minutes. The salesperson asks if you want to take a test drive. You say, "Before we go any further, I need to know the out-the-door price on this truck, not the monthly payment, the final price I'm writing a check for or financing with every fee included." They're trained to sell you on monthly payment, not total price. Monthly payment is where they bury the profit. If you force the out-the-door number first, they lose the ability to pack the payment later in the finance office. The monthly payment game works like this. They get you focused on, can you afford $580 a month? Instead of, is this truck worth $48,000? Once you're thinking in monthly terms, they can stretch the loan from 60 months to 72 months, add $2,000 in fees, and you won't notice because the payment only moved $40. You say, out the door price, everything included, and then you wait. If they try to pivot to monthly payment, you repeat it. I understand. What's the out the door price? The next one, they see coming even less. You don't have a trade-in. You sold your old car privately before you walked in. Or you're keeping it. Either way, there's no trade involved in this deal. The trade-in is a profit center disguised as a convenience. Dealerships lowball your trade by $2,000, then mark up the car you're buying by $1,500. And most buyers never notice because they're just looking at the difference. No trade means they can't play that shell game. My used car manager could look at a trade and know within $500 what it would bring at auction. But the number they offered the customer was always $1,500 to $2,500 below that. That gap is called trade gross. When you eliminate the trade, you eliminate trade gross. If they ask about a trade, you say, I haven't decided yet. Let's work out the price on this truck first. If the numbers make sense, we can talk about the trade later. That forces them to give you a clean price on the new car without trade manipulation. Some buyers actually do better trading in, especially if they owe more than the car is worth. That's called negative equity. The dealership can roll that into the new loan. So this isn't a universal rule. But if your car is paid off and worth something, you'll do better selling it yourself. If this is making sense so far, this channel covers exactly this kind of information every week. How the dealership actually works from someone who ran them. Hit subscribe. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm just here to even it out. Those first three, most dealerships expect them now. A certain percentage of buyers walk in prepared, but the next four, these are the ones that genuinely rattle them. Because these aren't about what you know. These are about what you do. Number 4. You don't come alone. You bring your daughter, your son, a friend, and that person doesn't talk much, doesn't ask questions, just sits there, watches, takes it all in. Salespeople are trained to read the buyer and mirror them. When there's a second person who won't engage, they can't read the room. Worse, they know that person is watching for inconsistencies. Silent observers wreck the psychological rhythm of the sale. I trained my salespeople to try to separate the buyer from companions whenever possible. Ma'am, while I grab the keys, would your daughter like to wait in the customer lounge? We've got coffee. If the companion stays in the room, the salesperson has to play it straighter because they know everything they say is being fact-checked in real time. And if you're over 60, listen carefully here, bring someone. Not because you need help, but because dealerships know that older buyers are statistically less likely to push back when they're alone. The presence of a second person, even if that person says nothing, changes the dealership's approach. That's not me guessing. That's what the training manual said. Before you walk in, tell your daughter or friend, I need you to stay with me the whole time. You don't need to say much, just be there. If something feels off, speak up. Now, not every dealership targets older buyers. Some of the most ethical salespeople I ever worked with went out of their way to protect seniors. But enough dealerships do that this becomes a necessary precaution. Number 5, they give you a number. You don't like it. You stand up, you say thank you, and you leave. You don't threaten to leave. You don't bluff. You just go. The entire sales process is built on the assumption that once you're emotionally invested, you've driven the car, you've talked numbers, you've been there an hour, you won't leave. The salesperson has been taught that if they can keep you in the building, they can close you. When you walk, you break that assumption. And more importantly, you prove you mean what you say. I watched this happen one afternoon with a retired couple looking at a CRV. Tom and Linda. They'd been in the showroom for 2 hours. Sales manager gave them a final number. Tom looked at Linda. Linda looked at Tom. Tom said, "That's not where we need to be. "Thank you for your time." And they walked. The salesperson came to me in a panic. "They're leaving!" I sent him outside. Salesperson caught them in the parking lot and dropped the price $1,800. They bought the car. I asked Tom later why he walked. Tom said, "Because I was willing to come back tomorrow and start over. They weren't willing to let me leave." You have to be genuinely willing to buy elsewhere. If it's a bluff, they'll sense it. But if you're prepared to walk into the Honda dealer across town, that comes across. And that's when the real number appears. The next two are smaller, but they work. Number 6, you pull out your phone. You take a picture of the window sticker. You take a picture of the VIN plate. You take a picture of the contract before you sign it. You don't ask permission, you just do it. Creates a record, creates accountability. If there's a discrepancy later between what they told you and what's on paper, you've got proof. Salespeople know that buyers who document the process are buyers who will come back with a lawyer if something's wrong. I had a policy that my salespeople couldn't tell customers not to take pictures, but I watched them get visibly uncomfortable every time someone did it, because it meant they couldn't fudge the details later. When they slide the contract toward you, before you sign it, you say, "I'm going to take a picture of this for my records." Take the picture. If they object, that's a red flag. Number 7, and this is the one. You're in the finance office. They've given you the interest rate on your loan. You look at the finance manager and you say, "What's the buy rate?" 3 words, that's all. Buy rate is insider terminology. It's the rate the bank actually approved you for, before the dealership marks it up. Most customers don't know that term exists. When you use it, the finance manager knows immediately that you understand dealer reserve. You're not a civilian anymore. I spent 6 years in the finance office. When someone asked for the buy rate, my internal reaction was, who told them to say that? Because it's not a phrase people pick up casually. It's a phrase you only know if you've been coached or if you used to work in the industry. And once you say it, the finance manager knows they can't mark up your rate without you seeing it. I had a customer named Margaret, 71 years old, buying a used Accord. She sat down in my finance office. I offered her 7.9% on the loan. Margaret said, "What's the buy rate?" I paused, pulled up the screen. Bank had approved her at 5.4%. I was marking it up 2.5 points. I told her the truth. She took the 5.4. I made no dealer reserve on that deal. After she left, I thought about who taught her that phrase. I never found out, but I respected it. You say, "What's the buy rate?" If they try to deflect or say they don't know what you mean, you repeat it. "The interest rate the bank approved me for, before your markup, that's the buy rate. What is it?" Finance managers are required to disclose the buy rate if you ask for it directly in most states. They just hope you won't. When you do, the entire dealer reserve profit disappears. They'll either give you the real rate, or they'll give you a smaller markup knowing you're watching. I sold dealer reserve for years. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's illegal, because it's not. It's disclosed in the paperwork, buried 3 pages deep in 8-point font. But legal doesn't mean right, and it definitely doesn't mean you have to accept it. Here's the thread. Every single one of these 7 things does the same thing. It takes information asymmetry and flips it. The dealership's edge is that they know more than you. They know the invoice price. They know the buy rate. They know what your trade is actually worth. They know the monthly payment math that hides the profit. When you walk in with your own financing, when you ask for out-the-door pricing, when you use phrases like buy rate, you're proving you know what they know. And once that happens, they can't play the game the same way. Bring your own financing. Ask for the out-the-door price first. Don't trade in unless you have to. Bring someone who stays quiet. Be willing to walk away and mean it. Take pictures and use the words, "What's the buy rate?" in the finance office. You don't need to do all 7. Pick the 2 or 3 that fit your situation. That's enough. Before you walk into a dealership, call your bank or credit union. Get pre-approved. Write the rate down. Bring the letter with you. Then, when you're on the lot, Ask for the out-the-door price before you test drive anything. Those two moves alone will cut the dealership's profit margin in half. The rest is just refinement. When I was managing that sales floor, the customers I respected most were the ones who made my job harder. Not because they were rude, not because they were difficult, but because they were prepared. They knew what I knew, and that meant I had to treat them like equals. That's all you're doing here. You're not trying to win, you're just trying to be on even ground. Next time you buy a car, try one of these. Just one. See what happens. That's it. That's the video. Next video covers what happens inside the finance office after you say yes to the truck. Some of you are going to want to see that.